Hello all, the Irrational Skeptic here, and today I am going to be doing a video titled The INFPs Dark Side, or the Dark Side of Introverted Feeling. It is another MBTI Decoded video in the series, and let's get into it. So, you know how people say INTPs are very stubborn due to their strong introverted thinking and inferior extroverted feeling? You know how people say that an INTP does not care about your feelings because they are blasting you with facts? You know how they say INTPs use seductive logic, or rather deductive logic, could be one and the same thing. Well, this whole thing also applies to the INFP or FI users. Their functions are as follows, with their shadow functions listed as well. So they have introverted feeling as a dominant function, extroverted intuition as an auxiliary, introverted sensing, tertiary, extroverted thinking, inferior. And on their shadow side, they have FE, extroverted feeling, NI, introverted intuition, SE, extroverted sensing, and TI, introverted thinking. Those are their 4 unconscious functions. Introverted feeling in the INFP is seen as the major concern when you are speaking of this type. I'm in Dr. Beebe's 8-function cognitive model, which I will allude to here. Their introverted feeling is the hero of the story. This archetype, amongst every type, is almost akin to what we would call a god. It sets rules of the game and all other functions must follow suit. I won't go into what the other archetypes are because they are not really needed for me to explain introverted feeling in particular, and it's not needed for me to explain why introverted feeling can be dark. I just make reference to Dr. Beebe's model for something for you to think about. I will list the link down in the description if you want to go further into that. So, introverted feeling is just as stubborn as introverted thinking, in that they are both subjective judgments rendered upon the environment. Even though I am calling these subjective judgments, they do not mean that they have no bearing upon reality. In fact, these judging functions are meant to describe objective reality as it is, without the subjective influence. I know it sounds confusing, but this is how it actually works. We can never fully remove ourselves from the equation, and so subjectivity, quote unquote, in a different sense, is always somewhat a part of everything we do. The stressed subjectivity in my last sentence refers to what everyone experiences as I, or rather the ego. But in relation to their subject matters, introverted thinking and introverted feeling are giving black and white pictures of what is and what is not. In the case of the INTP, if your premises logically lead to a conclusion and your premises are sound, then you will gain their approval. For example, premise 1, all balls are round. Premise 2, object 1 is a ball. Conclusion, therefore, object 1 is round. Say this to an INTP and they should be happy. The conclusion must follow given the above premises. Counterexample, all people that have red hair go to church. John goes to church. Premise 2. Conclusion, therefore, John has red hair. If you are an INTP or a good introverted thinking user, this example should ring alarm bells. The trick here is supposed to be that since you say red-haired people go to church, It tricks people into thinking that only red-haired people go to church. This is just poor logic, which is not what premise 1 says. Premise 2 has no real relationship to premise 1, but just sounds like it does because they both have the phrase go or goes to church. Moving on to INFP's introverted feeling. Believe it or not, introverted feeling valuing works in a similar fashion to introverted thinking logic. Introverted feeling literally deals with morality and hence tells us what is good or bad. To an FI user, there are actions that are objectively bad on their own merits and actions which are objectively good. Let's give a couple of examples. Example 1. Given without context. John, a 30-year-old man, goes to the store. He sees a 3-year-old with a piece of candy. He takes this candy away from the child and runs away. The child is left there crying because he just lost his lollipop. What is your verdict? An INFP, or a good introverted feeling user, should say that this is immoral. John purposefully committed an action which deprived a 3-year-old of their precious candy. John stole what was not his from a 3-year-old. Now, we could make the argument that the candy might not really belong to the 3-year-old. It was likely given to him, and he certainly did not produce it. So, is John really stealing from the 3-year-old? Given the exact situation outlined in example 1, and an introverted feeling perspective, you would be wrong. The INFP is doing just as much abstraction here as the INTP, but the former is just valuing more the real humans involved. That is, we are not robots. We have feelings, and each human responds to situations as if a right or wrong was done to them. If you see where I'm going with this, it means that this is binary. It is zeros and ones for the INFP just as much as it is for the INTP. Let's give another example. John is a man who, from childhood, was beaten by his parents. He grew up with little and had no real direction given to him. He always had to fight for what he got. He sometimes went to bed hungry and had to go to work the next day for a measly 50 cents an hour. On his way back from work one day, he was so hungry and he saw a piece of bacon through the window of what looked to be a wealthy man's home. He sneaks behind the bushes, breaks the window with a stick, steals the bacon, and runs away, eating it while running. What is your verdict? Given the context of example 2, the INFP would likely say that although John did cross the moral boundary of do not steal, given his circumstances, we should have leniency on him. What is important here is that the FI user really also wants the punishment to fit the crime. And this kind of reasoning is cognitively weighted to produce an outcome of justice. So, why do INFPs really show their dark side of introverted feeling? Well, it is because introverted feeling is a function that in all actuality experiences both the light and dark sides of the moon, so to speak. They must embody the darkest emotions in order to be harbingers of light. If you cross a certain line which they view as morally wrong, they will descend upon you with a hammer heavier than that of Thor's. In this video, I'm just trying to give an outline of the INFP's introverted feeling. As I've done in some other videos where I compare introverted feeling to introverted thinking, I try to let people know that both the INFP and the INTP are doing abstraction. In Carl Jung's psychological types, he makes a distinction between introverts and extroverts, mostly by saying that introverts abstract and extroverts feel into. What he means by abstracting is that the introvert in general tries to move away from the object, tries to move away from what we may deem to be reality. And by doing this, they are harsh upon the environment by rendering judgments that they receive from their own subjective valuing. It doesn't matter. It can be an introverted sensor, it could be an introverted thinker, it could be an introverted intuitive, or it can be an introverted feeler. It really doesn't matter, because in all cases, the type is trying to abstract away from the information at hand and trying to give what they see to be an objective stance on the situation. What he means by feeling into, in this case, would also mean that the extrovert in general tries to draw no distinctions between themselves and the object or the subject at hand. So an extroverted feeler really does not make a lot of distinction between their feelings and the feelings of others. The extroverted thinker does not really make any distinctions between what is pragmatically right to do and what they are doing in relation to this. The extroverted sensor sees their actions as impacting the world, but as the world as impacting them. They feel like they are part of the process of impacting and being impacted by. They feel into sensations. And lastly, the extroverted intuitive sees their myriad of probable actions or possible actions that are mostly cognitive. And I use the word abstract here carefully because I used abstraction to describe the introvert. But the word abstract in this case I am using to mean that the ENFP might be abstracting, but what they're really doing is they want these possibilities to exist in real life. They really do want to have the nice house and the car and the beautiful kids and the perfect marriage and the going on a vacation to Mars every couple of weeks, and all while at the same time being so lovely and kind to everyone. They believe that this is some sort of possibility, or not even just a possibility, it can be made to happen. And they also see that with proof, because they live through their actions. So when they create these things, then they say that they have proved that these things are real. Well, that's just a short video that I wanted to do on introverted feeling. I made a bit of a digression, or I took a bit of a tangent here at the end, trying to just give a little insight into what Jung's archetypes really are, what depth psychology really is. This steps away a little bit from the MBTI in the way that it characterizes people. What is important is to know the cognitive functions and know how they interact in society. And knowing this, you have a great powerhouse of information for your own relationships. So I really hope you got some value out of this. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Like I said, I have a link down here in the description for Dr. Beebe's archetypal models, which I find useful. I don't like everything about it, but I do like some things about it. Maybe in another video I will go over what I find useful and not useful in his descriptions. And that would be it for now. The Irrational Skeptic signing off.